Ask anyone who's plotted revenge, and they'll tell you the same thing. It'll finally give them closure. The research says they're wrong, and it can prove it. Getting even doesn't close the wound, it keeps it open. Someone hurt you, and you didn't scream. You didn't argue, you just went quiet. You told yourself that was the mature choice, the powerful one. You walked away, cut them off, and let the silence do the talking. But here's the uncomfortable question. Was that silence closure, or was it a slow-motion punishment you were also serving to yourself? We tend to think of silent revenge as the dignified option, living well, saying nothing, letting them wonder. But when you look at what's actually happening inside the brain, in the reward system, in the pain circuits, in the body, the story gets stranger than the advice on your feed. By the end of this, you'll be able to tell the difference between silence that heals you and silence that quietly keeps you hostage. First, let's be honest about the term. Silent revenge isn't a clinical diagnosis. You won't find it in a textbook. It's a popular name for a real cluster of behaviors psychologists have studied for decades. Revenge, the silent treatment, stonewalling, and the grudge you replay at 2 a.m. So the central question isn't, does silent revenge work? It's this. When you go quiet to get even, who is it actually happening to? The obvious explanation is that revenge feels good, and your brain agrees at first. In a landmark 2004 study, researchers scanned people while they punished someone who had betrayed their trust in a money game. The moment they delivered the punishment, a reward region deep in the brain, the dorsal striatum, lit up. The same kind of circuitry involved in craving and satisfaction. And here's the wild part. The people with the strongest reward activation were willing to pay real money out of their own pocket just to punish the betrayer. So the impulse is real. Getting even is, neurologically, a kind of reward. That explains why revenge is tempting, but it doesn't explain what happens next. Because if revenge is a reward, why do the people who take it end up feeling worse? Here's the twist the reward story leaves out. A set of Harvard experiments looked at what happens after people get their revenge. They let some participants punish a wrongdoer and stopped others from doing it. Then they checked back in. Common sense says the ones who got even should feel lighter. Case closed, move on. The opposite happened. The people who took revenge kept ruminating, chewing on the offender, replaying it. The people who couldn't retaliate moved on faster. Revenge didn't close the loop, it kept the loop open. And there's a deeper irony. When researchers asked people to predict how they'd feel, they were confident revenge would give them closure. It gave them the opposite. We are genuinely bad at forecasting our own revenge. So the satisfaction is front-loaded, a spike in the moment, then a long tail of thinking about the very person you wanted to forget. Now, that's active revenge. But silent revenge usually means something quieter. You go cold. You withdraw. You give them the silent treatment. Surely that is harmless? You're not doing anything, except the brain of the person on the receiving end disagrees. Using a simple online ball-tossing game called Cyberball, researchers had participants suddenly get excluded. The other players just stopped throwing them the ball. Brain scans showed exclusion activating the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, a region tied to the distress of physical pain. Being ignored didn't feel like pain metaphorically. It ran through overlapping pain machinery, and it's fast and almost impossible to switch off. People felt the sting even when they were told the other players were just a computer. Even when the exclusion was meaningless, it still hurt. So here's the reversal that changes everything. Silent revenge isn't one thing. It's two, wearing the same face. One is stepping back to protect yourself. The other is going quiet as a weapon. They look identical from the outside. Inside, they could not be more different. When silence becomes a weapon, it doesn't just wound the other person. It traps the one wielding it. Psychologist Kipling Williams, who has studied ostracism for decades, points out that humans are wired to reciprocate social signals. So sustaining the silent treatment takes constant effort. You have to keep re-justifying it, keep refeeding the anger to yourself. He describes it as a kind of psychological quicksand. The more you use it, the harder it is to climb out. And in relationships, this pattern has a name and a track record. Researcher John Gottman calls it stonewalling, shutting down and withdrawing during conflict, and identifies it as one of the strongest predictors that a relationship is heading for collapse. Which leads to the question people holding a grudge almost never ask. What is this silence doing to my own body? Here's where the myths fall apart. Myth 1. Getting it out of your system helps. Decades of research on catharsis say the opposite. Venting and acting on aggression tends to reinforce it, not drain it. Myth 2. A grudge is harmless if I keep it inside. In one study, when people simply recalled a grudge and ruminated on it, their heart rate climbed, their blood pressure rose, their face tensed, real, measurable stress. When they instead imagined forgiving, their body settled back toward baseline. The grudge you're holding silently is a bill your body is paying in the background. Myth 3. Forgiving means letting them win. In the research, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciling, excusing, or forgetting. It simply means letting go of the resentment and the revenge motive. You can forgive someone you never speak to again. So let's go back to that moment. Someone hurt you and you went quiet. That silence was never the problem. The question is, which silence it was. If you went quiet to step out of the fire, to stop the escalation, protect your peace, and genuinely move on, that's not revenge. That's boundaries. That's the version the evidence actually supports. But if you went quiet to make them suffer, to keep them in your head, replaying it, rationing your silence like a punishment, then the person serving the sentence is you. Living well is the best revenge is an old line, often attributed to the poet George Herbert. It was never a scientific claim, but the science quietly agrees with the spirit of it. The people who let go, disengage, and rebuild, they're the ones whose minds and bodies actually recover. So the real power move was never the silence itself. It was choosing whether that silence was a door you walked through or a cell you locked yourself inside. If this reframes something for you, sit with it for a second before you reach for your next grudge. And if someone you know is currently getting even by going quiet, you might want to share this with them.